off the table.
No, what we have said is this bill has to be deficit neutral. We think there are better ways of obtaining additional revenue, and we have to let this legislative process play out.
All right, you say it would only hit a small number of people. Mm-hmm. In fact, according to studies, 2/3 of small business profits would be hit by those taxes. And I want to take a look at what Christina Roemer, the head of the President's Council of Economic Advisors, said a couple of years ago when she was a private economist. Tax increases appear to have a very large, sustained, and highly significant negative impact on output. Mr. Orszag, wouldn't raising taxes that much on small business profits be a job killer?
No, and I don't know where you got your 2/3 number from. The vast majority of small businesses
That's the National Federation of Independent Businesses.
Would not be affected. I'd be happy to refer you to.
It's not the 2/3 of businesses; it's 2/3 of profits.
I understand, and again, what we are trying to do here is a fiscally responsible health reform. I've actually run a small business. I'd be happy to speak to folks about this. The most important
Would you be happy to pay 57%?
No, look, the most important thing for small businesses is getting the economy back on its feet. The key driver of small business activity is demand for their product, and that is what we are trying to do, getting the economy back on its feet. That's far more important than other factors.
Let's do a lightning round. Quick questions, sure. Quick answers on some of the key issues on health care reform. The head of the CBO says one good way and an effective way to cut costs is to tax health care benefits at some point, at some level. But the head of the Senate Finance Committee, Democrat Max Baucus, says the White House has already ruled that out. Is that true?
It's something the president doesn't favor.
And is that because the big unions don't want taxing of their health care benefits, which they've gotten, the UAW, police unions, firefighters?
No, I think it's also because he is concerned about the impact that, on employer-sponsored insurance, on the coverage you already have.
The president says no rationing of health care costs, but you've mentioned a couple of times he wants this commission of doctors and medical experts to oversee medical practices. In the end, aren't they going to be telling private and public insurers what treatments are allowed and what treatments aren't?
This is the biggest canard that is floating throughout this debate. The fact of the matter is, right now, politicians and insurance companies are making decisions. We're saying we want doctors to be making decisions, and I think that will lead to a higher quality, lower cost system over time.
But when you say they're making decisions, they would be saying you can have this treatment, you can't have that treatment.
Do you think that politicians are currently rationing care? Are insurance companies currently rationing care? There's no set of decisions that this commission would have that is not currently resting with either members of Congress or insurance companies.
So they would be rationing care?
No, because I don't think we're rationing care today, and similarly, they would not be in the future. What they would be doing is setting reimbursement rates and moving towards a higher quality system.
Are you prepared to say that in a government, public-funded, taxpayer-funded public health insurance plan that no taxpayer money will go to pay for abortions?
I think that will wind up being part of the debate. I'm not prepared to say explicitly that right now. It's obviously a controversial issue, and it's one of the questions that is playing out in this debate.
So you're not prepared to rule out?
I'm not prepared to rule it out.
Will both the House and Senate meet the president's deadline and pass separate health care measures before they go on August recess?
That is the goal.
And what do you think of the chances?
I think the chances are high.
Let's turn, in the time we have left, to the economy. When Congress passed the $787 billion stimulus, the White House said that it would keep unemployment a little over, at the top, 8%. It's now, as you well know, at 9.5%. And I want to put up the projections this week from the Federal Reserve. They forecast it may hit 10.1% in the fourth quarter of this year and will still be 9.5 to 9.8% at the end of next year. Do you agree with those numbers, and why were all of you in the White House so wrong?
Well, look, if you look back last December or so, everyone, almost everyone, thought that the economy was not as weak as it actually was. You can't go from job losses of 700,000 a month, which is what was happening in the months leading up to January, to job growth like that, just instantaneously. It is going to take some time to work our way out of this. The situation in December and in January was worse than most people thought.
But you passed the stimulus in February. You knew how bad the situation. I mean, the president kept saying it was a catastrophe.
No, but it was even worse than people thought. If you look back at the majority of the blue chip forecasts and the other forecasts, including from the Federal Reserve, late last year, which is what we were basing our projections on at the time, they were all somewhat too optimistic because the economy was weaker at that time than anyone anticipated. What we're trying to do is focus on how we can, and also remember, that sense of free fall, minus 6% on GDP growth, that is attenuated. There's still a lot more that needs to be done, but we're not in the same position that we were then.
But just quickly, in the 30 seconds we have left, the Fed says 9.5 to 9.8% at the end of 2010.
It's going to take time to work our way out of this.
So you wouldn't dispute those
I'm
numbers?
not disputing those numbers.
Mr. Orszag, we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank you so much for coming in. Please come back, sir.
Thank you.
For the Republican view of health care reform and the economy, we turn now to Senator Judd Gregg, who joins us from New Hampshire. And, Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
I'd like to get you to react to what you just heard from Peter Orszag. First of all, he says that what the president ends up signing, one, won't add to the deficit, and two, will cut health care costs.
Well, he disagrees, obviously, with the CBO director on the second point. The issue of whether it adds to the deficit will be a determination of how much they're willing to raise taxes. But the real question here, and I think the nail was hit on the head by Mr. Elmendorf, who's head of CBO, and who is, by the way, appointed by the Democratic leadership of the House and the Senate. And he said that this bill, as proposed, or the bills as proposed, would significantly aggravate the health care cost situation, that the cost of health care would go up significantly, and that it would raise significantly the burden on the federal government as to what it had to pay. And as a very practical matter, it did nothing in the out years to contain the rate of growth of health care costs. Those were pretty damning words, to be very honest with you, and they should make a step back, pause, and take a look at what's going forward in the Congress and say, how can we do this better? And there are ways to do this better.
I want to follow up on a couple of more points that Mr. Orszag said. He, while not endorsing it, he defended the House idea of a surtax on top earners, and he basically ruled out any tax on health care benefits.
Well, I'm not sure that he ruled it out. I think, in fact, he did the opposite in a letter that he sent to myself and Senator Conrad, chairman of the Budget Committee. Senator Conrad, chairman of the Budget Committee, I'm not. And that letter said there are two ways to address health care in a substantive way that will address reform and reduce the rate of growth in the out year. The first is to control the deductibility on high-end cost plans, so that if you're getting a plan that's worth $17,000 a year, the amount of did that plan exceed $17,000, let's say it goes up to $20,000 a year, that wouldn't be deductible. That has two effects. First, it creates revenue, but secondly, it reduces overutilization. The second thing he said that had to be done is you have to change the way we reimburse for health care, especially in the Medicare arena, where you reward quality and not just simply people doing procedures. He said if you do those two things, you can get some significant out-year restraint on costs. Regrettably, neither of the proposals that are now pending in the Congress do either of those things.
Also, Mr. Orszag left wide open the possibility that the public health plan will give taxpayer dollars to pay for abortions. That's going to create a lot of heartburn on Capitol Hill, won't it?
Well, of course it does. The abortion issue always does, and you know, I mean, no matter what your views are on abortion, you shouldn't ask people to use their tax dollars if they think abortion is taking a life, to use their tax dollars for that purpose. So, hopefully, that issue can be addressed. I would hate to see the health care debate go down over that issue. We do really need health care reform. And it has to be substantive, and it has to bend that out-year cost curve, and we have to have a system that covers everyone. So hopefully we won't get ourselves wrapped around the wheel of abortion in this debate.
All right, you say that we do need health care reform, but the fact is, Senator, that in every vote that's been taken in the various committees in both the House and the Senate, every Republican has voted unanimously against health care reform.